Together we are but first coffee. Susie's just our host, but what matters most is we are a team. Together we are all safe here, and so are you. Among friends and mods we are safe. We talk about trauma, break down drama of life, death, happy or sad, even mad. We discuss it all here. Together we will thrive, not just survive. We will dry each other's tears, celebrate big or small wins, and chase away the fears. Together we fight cults or fight addictions. If not with experience, with love, and we don't judge. Please understand, this is a safe place to land. Please understand, you're not alone. This is a safe place to land. Together we thrive, not just survive. We will dry each other's tears, celebrate big or small wins, and chase away the fears. Because we are but first coffee, and Susie welcomes us all here. Together we are but first coffee, and Susie.
Hey, everybody. It's good to see you. How's everyone doing? I see several people have come in already, and I'm sure that they'll come in as we go along or on the replay. I'm always so glad for everybody, whether they're here live or on the replay. We appreciate you all. Thank you very much. I do want to say hello to the chat that is assembled so far. Joel, it is always so good to see you. Thank you so much for being a member. Marilee is here. Thank you so much. You are just amazing. Renee Mora, good to see you. Evie is here. Yay. Sarah Bowman. Lord Kissfree, good to see you. Yeah, so that looks like it's about everybody that's in the chat at the moment. We've got more on the actual, on the live. They're just not chatting so far. So anyway, I just wanted to say hello and thank you to everybody that has been so kind to me and checked on me and sent wonderful messages since some of the ridiculous rumors that were started a few nights ago. It's meant a lot to me to know that it's not my people that are believing it. It is her people that are maybe choosing to believe it. So, hey, Ben, good to see you. I don't want, I'm not going to go into a lot about that. That's pretty much it. I just want to say thank you to everybody that has sent me messages, even if it was just, encouragement or whatever. It means a lot. It really does. You don't understand how just a kind word sometimes really helps. So, my mods have been amazing. As always, I have the best mods, the best chat, the best, channel, everything. And today I've got two amazing guests. So today we're going to welcome Angie Wilson and Sarah Patrick. They are friends and they have both suffered abuse, different kinds of abuse, different abusers, and completely different situations, but abuse. Today we are going to focus mainly on Sarah. But I do want Angie to talk too. She's here to support her friend and to kind of, she's new to the channel. So Angie's going to kind of help her feel completely at home. And we will then we'll touch on her story, but we are going to deep dive into her story next week. And I really look forward to that. Marilee said in the best theme song, I love our theme song. I think it's great. And I really do. I think that I've had a lot of compliments on it, so thank you. It's an AI thing, and you just write down the lyrics that you want it to say, and they put it to music and they give you all kinds of different options. And so that's the option I chose out of all of them. So my husband still thinks that I should do an instrumental one and sing it myself, but maybe I will, like, for a, not the regular one, but like one for a special occasion or something. Hey, Patty, good to see you. Aw, I just wanted to say I support you and your community all the way. Thank you. Thank you. Wait, is this the box for heads? Ben, Ben, you're something. Oh, wrong channel. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I don't want either of their stories to go untold. Now, before I do bring them on, I want to show you. I'm going to bring up. I've got 3 pictures that I want to bring up to you because I want you to kind of have something in your head of what we're talking about or where we're talking about. And so I do have those 3 pictures I'm going to share with you, and then I've got a little something I'm going to read to you, and then they will come on. So this is going to go pretty quick until we get to them. So anyway, okay, let me see. So this is actually the Greenville Christian College in Ontario. So anyway, and it has an affiliation with the Community of Jesus in Massachusetts. So anyway, this is the school that we will be discussing. Let me see here. Take that down. This is like the, sign. It is a beautiful property. I just love these old properties. They're absolutely beautiful. And then this is a picture that kind of demonstrates the Community of Jesus. Of course, this is just the women, but it is a monasterial type group, and they live communally, and there's a lot. There is a lot. We will be deep diving them later, but today I'm here for Sarah to tell her story and whatever part of her story she wants to tell. So that's what we're here for today. And then if it warrants it, then we will do a deep dive in a couple of days into the Community of Jesus. So before my guests speak, I would like to set the stage for this. So I think that it's a difficult story about Greenville Christian College and their ties to the Community of Jesus. I did put a trigger warning for that, but I do want to stress that we do have a trigger warning because I'm sure that some of what we're going to discuss is going to be difficult. And again, this is Mental Health Awareness Month. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so if this is something that you cannot handle, especially live, if you need to come back on the replay where you can watch it in segments or whatever you want to do, that's absolutely fine. Take care of yourself first and foremost, please. Okay, if you've never heard of either the Greenville Christian Church or the Community of Jesus, buckle up, y'all. This is a story where faith, education, control, and harm tragically collide, and a lot of people were very hurt by these organizations. So again, I'm just setting the stage, and then I want Sarah to share her firsthand account of her own experiences and what all went on. But I did want to kind of tell you a little bit about the background of all this so that you'll have that in the back of your mind while she's presenting her story. So it is a school with a shadowed past. Greenville Christian School was a private boarding school in Maitland, Ontario from 1973 till its sudden closure in 2007. On the surface, it seemed rooted, in Anglican tradition promising discipline, structure, and spiritual growth. But former students and staff actually say the reality was much darker. So what really went on? I'm not going to tell all of it because that's what she's for. But I do want to say that there was middle of the night interrogations with flashlights. in the faces of children, and grillings about your sins, and just, can you imagine in the middle of the night they just like shine a flashlight in your face? Anyway, there was punitive isolation where they put you in discipline, and you were separated, and you were silenced, and every move was controlled. There was also physical abuse, there was beatings, and there's reports of urination on students, which is all just so incredibly disgusting and wrong. And there was shame and fear, public humiliation, emotional breakdowns, the whole bit. And if you're thinking, sounds like a cult, you would be absolutely right, in my opinion. And sounds a lot like Scientology. I've said and said and said time and time again, these cults, they're not, you know, unique. They have slightly different doctrinations. They have, those kind of uniquenesses, but it's like there's a handbook out there somewhere and they all follow it. So, it is said that Greenville was influenced by the Community of Jesus, and that the leaders or the headmasters were Charles Farnsworth and J. Alistair Haig, members of the lesser known group of Community of Jesus, based in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. The group has been described by former members, journalists, and religious experts as a cult-like Christian community with strict hierarchy, rigid obedience, and deeply invasive control over members' entire lives, every aspect of their lives. Inside the Community of Jesus, there is public shaming and confessional rituals. There's extreme control over relationships, schedules, even contact with family. And there is rigid top to bottom structure, deep psychological control. Again, very much like Scientology. So they also have isolation from the outside world, which creates a deep dependence on the community itself and a fear of leaving, which also sounds very much like Scientology, very much like so many cults that we've talked about. So there was a long road to justice, y'all. In 2007, former Greenville students, they started a class action lawsuit against the school and its leaders and the Anglican, I can't talk today, sorry, Diocese of Ontario. It took over a decade, but in 2020, the Ontario Supreme Court ruled in favor of the survivors, acknowledging systematic abuse had occurred, and the Community of Jesus was the driving force behind it. Victory is powerful for the victims, but the abuse was still done to them, and many suffer to this day, as I'm sure that you will hear from our guests today. Okay, so why does this story matter? Because people like Sarah matter. We all matter. And this is a safe place for her to talk about those things, just like it would be a safe place for any of you to talk about things that have happened in your past or that are happening currently. And it's a reminder that abuse can hide in the appearance of authority, discipline, or religious devotion. So people are discouraged from reporting institutions large and small, and they must be held accountable, no matter if it's a small community church or a big worldwide organization. They have got to be held accountable. Now, I want us to welcome Sarah and Angie and listen to Sarah's firsthand account of the abuse that she suffered, and also to Angie and how learning of Sarah's abuse changed her, her perspective, y'all, on cults and in religious organizations in general, and how she supports her friend, how she felt when she found out about her friend's story. And we're also going to talk about the fact that that Sarah wrote a book, which I'm currently reading. I am usually a really fast reader, but there has been so much going on that I really have had to just not read much for the last few days because I've had such a bad headache. And so I'm going to finish this up tonight. So some of what she's going to tell, I will know about. Some of it I won't. So if you see the shocked expression on my face, that's probably why. But I I honestly I am looking forward to hearing it in her own voice as well as reading it in her own words. Her book is available on Amazon and it's called Binding Shame: Life Inside a Cult of Obedience, and it is by Sarah Patrick. Okay. So if one of my mods can look on Amazon and get that link, that would be great. I forgot to do that. So anyway, so now I'm going to welcome Sarah and Angie to the stage, and we're going to Angie is going to introduce her friend to us and kind of, start us out on this journey. So anyway, so here we come. We're going to bring them on, y'all. Hello.
Hi.
You are live.
Oh, it's good to be live. It's good to be alive.
Yes, it's good to be live and alive, of course. We have quite a few people that are popping in now to see you, quite a few people in the chat. And so, Angie, if you want to just go ahead and kind of start us out and let us know who this lovely lady next to you is, and then after you get finished, then she can start with her story.
Awesome. So this is Sarah, and she is my step sponsor. I
Mhm.
met her in AA, and she was my sponsor when my own sponsor, her son passed away. And so she was unavailable to me for quite a time. And I needed somebody that I could go to because I couldn't access my own sponsor. And
Yeah.
so I went to Sarah and I asked if she could be that person for me, and she immediately agreed. And I didn't know anything about her background until about a year into my own sobriety. I asked her to speak at my 1 year medallion, and
Mhm.
that's when her story came out. And I couldn't believe what she had been through, the strength that she had, and the fact that she had been able to go through this and somehow find God again in her life.
Wow.
And that was something that I had been struggling with at that time. I'm in a 12 step, and having a God or a higher power is very important, necessary part of the program. And I really just struggled so hard with finding that higher power again. And I wasn't able to fully find it and grasp it back until I witnessed hearing Sarah's story,
Wow.
because it was that major impact of how she had been through what she had been through, the abuse on like both sides, and yet still had found a way to come back to Jesus and love God again. And that was so impactful and important for me that it just really elevated and pushed along my own ability to find love for God and for a higher power. And
Mhm.
so that was like a huge part of my own recovery, as well as, for that first year, it was really imperative that I had that support when my own sponsor was not available to me. She was dealing with a very, very tragic personal circumstance, and she just didn't have the time or the ability to be there for me. Completely
Yeah.
understandable, but I
Oh,
needed
absolutely.
somebody. And wow, did I ever get somebody who really helped me. So
Aw.
what happened is I started off by watching, growing up in Scientology with Aaron Smith Levin, and I was a huge watcher, avid watcher. I wasn't a chatter. I didn't like get into that side of it, but I do remember when he started first selling merch on the fourth wall. And he used to say all the time, or he still says, guys, what do I know? I grew up in a cult, you know? And
Yeah.
so I was waiting for the longest time after he announced that he was going to start selling merch on the fourth wall for him to drop that specific piece. And it seemed like he was dropping piece after piece of merch,
Yeah.
and he just was not doing this one. It seemed like forever.
Yeah.
And when he finally did drop that piece of merch, I immediately bought it off the first batch. And
Aw.
this is the piece of merch.
Okay, go up closer. There we go. Oh, it's hard to see.
Oh, yeah, a little bit
It's a
back.
bit
Don't
foggy.
worry.
Go back a bit. Go back a bit. Go back. Oh, it's
A
coming. It's coming. It's coming.
little
Go
bit
back.
more.
Go back. A
Right
little bit more.
Oh,
there.
There.
it is.
There we go.
What do I know? I grew up in a cult.
Right. And
Yeah,
so,
I love that saying. I really do.
and so it was really God telling me that I had to get this, and it had to be for Sarah. And the truth is that Sarah kept putting me off. I kept harassing her to meet with me so that I could give her this piece of merch. And she kept putting me off and putting me off until I remember one day I texted her and I said, listen, I don't need you to hang out with me. I don't need anything. I just need you to tell me where you are. I will come and I will drop it off to you and I will leave. Just tell me where you are. And so she finally relented and said, okay, come meet me at our local community college here in Halliburton for
Yeah.
Sanford Fleming, and meet me for lunch. And so I jumped. I said, okay, I will be there for your lunch. And so we met and we sat down, and I remember she was eating, and I pulled it out of the box and I showed it to her, and she dropped her fork and started crying.
Aw.
And so I didn't know why she was so emotional, but I was emotional right there with her because, you know, like my friend was touched. And she then told me why she was at the college, which I wasn't part of the conversation prior to me showing up. And she said, I'm here taking a writing class because I am
Wow.
writing my memoir, my book, and my teacher, my professor, has just told me that I have to present a part of this book in front of the class. And because it is a very personal and very raw telling of a very tragic story,
Yeah,
you
it
know,
is.
it was really difficult. I can only imagine for her to find the courage to have to, especially in the writing process, to share that with her class, you know.
Yeah.
And she said, I had no idea how I was going to get through this, but you just brought me my armor. And
Aw.
so that was such a beautiful moment for
Mhm.
both of us, where our friendship was bonded forever and solidified forever in that moment. And a couple of months later, no, a year or maybe
Mhm.
a while later, she texted me and she said, are you home? And I said, yeah. And she's like, come to the door. I have something for you. And so I went to the door and she handed me this, which is going to do the blur thing again. But you have
Yeah.
the copy of the book. Yours isn't blurred,
Yes,
so
I
you can
do.
show it. And on the inside cover, it says, to dear Angie, your loyal and loving support helped make this book possible. Thank you, dear friend, Sarah. And I read it. I went actually to Florida for my birthday, and I read it on the plane, which I was so scared. And somehow I loved the plane ride. I just stuck my nose in this book, and it was just an amazing plane ride for me. It's pretty crazy because I was terrified. But then I got to the back, the acknowledgments portion, and she mentioned me in it. And that just blew me away. I couldn't believe it. My heart was so full. she put me in print forever. and and I could not be more proud of her. I could not be more happy for her, and I am just so proud of her.
Hmm.
And so
I am too.
I of course want to share her with the world.
Well,
Wonderful.
I got my copy of the book, and it too is signed. So
Oh, yeah,
she
that's
signed
great.
one for
That's
me,
great.
and I also got a huge bottle of homemade maple syrup. So my husband was like, "You can have the book. That's mine." So yeah, we were very excited. I was in shock. Thank you. Thank you very much for the book and the syrup. So yeah, so Sarah, tell us, where do you want to
Okay.
start with this? I don't,
I
you can
think I
start
want to.
wherever you want.
Okay. This is what I'm going to start with. I don't know if you can see
Hmm.
this. This
Yeah,
is the cross from the book.
yeah.
And I chose to put this side of it on the front of the book, not the one with this embossed design. If you can see the
Hmm.
embossed design on it, it's a grain of wheat with
Oh yeah.
small seeds of wheat below. So this is the cross of the community of Jesus. And I'll skip to like later in the story. This is a cross that was given to me when I took vows, lifetime vows to the community of Jesus. So that was
Hmm.
later in life, probably. Yeah. So that was later in life, and I will tell you how I got to this point where I
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
took vows to this place. So I was a really troubled child and teenager. I had a lot of dysfunction in my family, and it was emotionally abusive. It was not physically abusive.
Hmm.
But it was enough that made me want to not be with my family, and I was acting out in all kinds of ways. I was drugging, and I was hitchhiking, and I was just doing, pretty severe stuff as a teenager. And my parents sent me to a boarding school in Toronto, and I got kicked out. And then they found they needed a more draconian school, something that would be more disciplinary for me because I was running wild. So they found this place called Grenville Christian College in Brockville. It was advertised in the Anglican Churchman paper, which my parents were Anglican, and I was confirmed Anglican. So when I was 16, they sent me to the school, and the school was run by a religious community. And so all the teachers and all the people who worked in the school in the kitchen and all that kind of stuff were all members of a religious community. Now we didn't know that. My parents didn't know
Hmm.
that when we went. And so basically I tried to run away from there. I didn't want to go. It was very, very harsh. And the way they dealt with bad behavior, they kind of, it was during the era. I went in 76, and 76 was that era, I would say a decade, was a period of, I don't know if you guys know the term tough love, but there
Hmm.
was a period in time where when the 60s came around and everybody was doing drugs and rock groups and everything, parents freaked out because their kids were really rebelling. And they started to send their kids to really regimented schools to straighten out their behavior.
Hmm.
So an industry developed called like I don't know the name of it, but it was like a teen turnaround industry, and they would send troubled kids
Hmm.
off to these schools, and they were very harsh. So Granville was one of those, but it had religious overtones. And so they sent me there when I was 16. And I I was, on one hand, I was happy to be away from my parents because I hated life at home. But this place was very hard. And so the way they brought about change in behavior, so if they said to me, they'd look at me and say, okay, I saw you talking to a boy and you guys were off by yourselves. Now that would have been a broken rule. There was a 6-inch rule. You were not allowed to be alone with a boy. And they would then call what they could. So the order of the punishment was they would call what they called a light session, and that term was used to talk about bringing a soul from darkness to light, from away from the devil to God. And so they did that through public humiliation. So if I was caught with a guy, not even necking or doing anything, but just talking, and I broke that rule, they would have a light session on my behalf that was the whole school, 350 people in the chapel, trying to bring about my repentance. And if I
Mhm.
didn't repent sufficiently enough, then I would be disciplined. And I'm saying discipline with a capital D. That was the name of it. It was called discipline. And
Mhm.
that would be um, physical labor, scrubbing floors, ostracized from the rest of the students. I would be out of uniform. We had a school uniform. We would be out of uniform. We weren't allowed to talk to anybody. We had to live with the staff members, and they would keep us isolated in their apartments, and we weren't allowed to communicate with anybody. So I think a big part of what ended up happening to me then was because I was really cut off from my people, my
Mhm.
peers, and I was really indoctrinated by them because I'd spent more time living with the staff than I actually did in the student population because I was so bad. I kept
Yeah.
breaking rules, right? And so I was
She
constantly being
mentions the
disciplined.
she mentions these rules though, and I never saw anything that was that bad. I mean, considering, a teenager, I mean, you
Yeah,
weren't,
teenager. I know.
yeah, you weren't
It was,
horrible.
yeah. No, no, but we weren't allowed to listen to rock music. We had to wear
Yeah.
bathing suits that went past our knee. We had to wear camisoles under our blouses so that they couldn't see our bra through the shirt. Like we had to wear, we couldn't wear bikini underwear, like it was kind of silly rules. And then there were the big rules around no smoking and drugs and all of that. If you got caught
Mhm.
on that level, you were expelled. But the other stuff, and then there was the thought police stuff where they would
Yeah.
say, I get a feeling about you that you're in darkness. What is it that you're thinking? And I would go, I don't know. And the next thing I know, I'd be on discipline for an attitudinal problem. So it wasn't an actual infraction that I broke. It was a attitudinal problem. So
Mm.
you'd think like, with that kind of thing going on, you think I'd run like hell, which I did. I tried to run away and, but I ended up going back um, I think because I just knew that I couldn't, I like they kept telling me if you're not going to stay here, if you go out in the world again, you're going to end up a prostitute, you're going to end up a drug addict, and I don't know why I believed them, but I did. And then it came to a point where I was there for 4 years. So I got there for grade 10 and I graduated in grade 13. And during that time, that 4 years was a very intense indoctrination, and indoctrination not just into the way of the community life, as I called it, because the
Mhm.
staff who ran this place lived in the same way they were telling us to live. So they had their own light sessions and they had their own disciplines, and we'd often see teachers disappear. We didn't know where they went, and the next thing we
Mhm.
knew, they're out weeding the garden, or they're doing something. We knew they were being punished. So it was a lifestyle for the whole place. And it because the adults were doing it too, it became normalized to me. Like, oh yeah, this is just the way we live. This is, um, at a certain point in time, I was being suspended and disciplined so much that my father said to the headmaster, the next time Sarah's in trouble, I'm coming to take her home forever. And I was so afraid of that I did do something else. I smoked on a class trip somewhere and I was disciplined, and I was expecting my father to show up with a car to take me home, which I absolutely didn't want. Grenville was better than home to me. And so I apologized and I said, I will change. I promise I will change. I promise I'll give my heart to God, which is what they wanted me to
Mhm.
do, and just don't send me home. So they did that. They didn't tell my father I did another mistake. And from that moment on, I felt that they were allied with me, that they were really trying to save me. And so I went on and I started to give up my rebellion. I started applying myself academically. I started to excel. I ended up the valedictorian. And I was told by the headmaster, who was our priest, I was told that he felt strongly that God was calling me to live there, to be a staff member there. And so I didn't want that because I didn't like the light sessions and the punishments.
Mhm.
Um, I had been introduced to the Community of Jesus. Well, in that 4 years, I was introduced to the Community of Jesus because all the staff at Granville were vowed members of the Community of Jesus. They had crosses like this, and they were vowed members, and they had to go down, 4 times a year on retreat, and they took spiritual direction from the leaders of the Community of Jesus. So I had been introduced to the Community of Jesus. I had gone down as a student for March break. I stayed at the Community of Jesus. I had listened to the mothers who were the leaders of the Community of Jesus, Mother Kay and Mother Judy. We listened to their teaching tapes. They would talk on various subjects, and the students would listen to them while we were working. So they were very integrated. The Community of Jesus, although we didn't see it for a few years, became a part of our life. So, do I have enough time? Can I keep going?
Oh, yeah, you keep going. You got all the
Yeah.
time you need.
Okay. So I think that 4 years really did. I was very indoctrinated, and I think that I had a problem. My father and I didn't have a very good relationship, and I think I always wanted his approval, and I didn't
Mhm.
want him to criticize me anymore. I didn't want, and I think the headmaster slash priest at Granville, in a way, stood in for my father, and he was somebody who, like, my father would punish me, and then he'd go and work, and I wouldn't see him for a long time. And then, so it seemed like every point that I saw my father was always negative. Like, what did you do wrong? It was like that. But when I was at Grenville, I'd get my sins or my rebellion was pointed out, but they never left me. It was like it was a
Yeah.
family, and so I was getting more positive reinforcement a bit from them in the times that I wasn't being disciplined. So it ended up I attached to them like a family, more so than my own family. Um, so anyway, I graduated, and I went on to university, and then, but I always had it in my head that I had a call, oh, I have a
Mhm.
call on my life. Oh God, okay, I have a call. The more I was out of
Yeah.
that place at university, the more I was back in the world again. And it was like, wow, the world is fun. And
Yeah.
and the more I was away from it, the more I could sort of see it in more reality. Like, wow, that's a scary place. Like, they do scary things there. They really are mean
Yeah.
there. Not safe, not safe, right? And so by the time I graduated university, I did not want to go back. I know they said I had
Mm.
a call, but I was willing to risk going to hell, which they told me would
Mhm.
happen if I didn't follow my call. I was willing to risk that than go back. And
Wow.
so I went on for about 3 years. I went into the theater in Toronto, which was like the devil. Like, to them, it would have been like I was
Mhm.
playing with the devil. And
Absolutely.
I got into some shenanigans. Like, I got into the theater lifestyle, which was drinking and drugging, not heavily, but like marijuana.
Yeah.
Like, that was a lifestyle. And I was
Mhm.
enjoying my freedom. Again, like, wow, it's been years since I had this freedom. And then my drinking kind of escalated, and I had a big breakdown, kind of a breakdown situation, and I determined that my breakdown was because I was out of the will of God. Like, they were right. I was out of the will of God, and
Yeah.
I was supposed to go to Grenville, and I didn't. And oh my gosh. So I phoned them up and I said, okay, so I'm now 26.
Mm.
Um, I phoned them up and said, okay, you were right. I was wrong, but I'm not willing to commit yet. Can I come for a year and just see what happens? Come back for a year. So I packed up my life in Toronto, and I moved to the Grenville. And the first year was extremely hard. I had been drinking a
Mm.
lot, and I think the drinking the drinking solved a lot of problems for me, like emotional problems. It made me feel better. And
Yeah.
so when I moved to Grenville and stopped the drinking, all my emotions flooded back, like all the stuff I was
Yeah.
avoiding. And so Father Farnsworth, who was the priest and my pseudo father, he said, he said to me, your crying is self-pity. You are not to cry anymore. And so I couldn't cry. Like, I was,
Yeah.
it was like I had to stop
Oh.
immediately. Stop crying. I stopped crying. And by the end of the year, I determined that yes, they were right, that I had avoided my call and I was supposed to be there. And so I stayed there. I think after the first 5 years as an adult, so maybe when I was around 30, I took vows to the community of Jesus, which we were all supposed to do. Like all the staff did that. We took vows,
Mhm.
and I took vows of stability, and I can't remember what they were. And life was very hard as a staff member. Life was incredibly hard. It was harder than anything I've ever gone through. Even when I was a student, I thought that I deserved what I was getting because I was such a rebellious kid. So it was
Mhm.
like tough love, and I needed the tough love, right? But as an adult, it was so abusive. It was so
Mhm.
abusive. And I remember as a young staff member, I mean, 26-year-old, I had arrived. I was, I think, in my year two of being a staff member. I became a teacher there. Um, I remember they put pressure on us. They formed a group called Corpus Christi, and it was young staff members who they felt weren't grateful enough, weren't living in the light enough, and all whatever, right? And we would have
Mhm.
these situations where we would have all our meals we had to eat together in a circle, and we had to correct each other. And if we didn't correct each other, we were corrected ourselves for being self-loving and not having the love
Mhm.
of Jesus for our fellow man whose sins needed to be corrected. So there was a tremendous amount of pressure to do that. And I
Mhm.
remember a good friend of mine in that group was not, she was kind of fighting back a little bit. Most of us just caved and did what we were told, but she was fighting it. And we just about, not, we didn't kill her literally, obviously, but I mean, we
Yeah, I know what you
pressured
mean.
her so much, right? We pressured her so much
Yeah.
to break her. And she finally, oh, she still wouldn't break. So what they did was this girl was attending classes, university classes in Queens. So she'd go every day by car to an hour to go to Queens. And they made her wear a sign around her neck that said, I refuse to grow up. And she had to wear it on campus at Queens. And she had to wear it all through the community when we lived together, right, in the community. And she
Mhm.
had to wear it, and it was humiliating. Like I remember looking at that sign and saying, they are never going to do that to me. Like that was beyond everything to me. It was such a humiliation. um anyway, I lived there for the next 16 years, and over those
Oh.
years I basically became more and more withdrawn and more afraid. I never fought back because that wasn't my style. It was too dangerous to fight back. So I just took it, and it made me retreat. And by the time I was at about I was there for 16, so subtract 5, so 11 years. At year 11, I started to drink alcoholically. And that was
Mhm.
the big solution to my problem of being there. And it made me happy. It made me happy for once. And it made me less afraid to pass people in the hall in case they were going to correct me. Um, and so my drinking escalated over the 5 years. And I ended up in a terrible situation where was hiding the drinking, and I
Mm.
started to act out sexually with people in the town that the school was near. And I got pregnant, had a miscarriage, and then a complete breakdown, like a complete breakdown.
Mm.
All this was done secretly. I would have been, had they known, they
Mm.
probably would have sent me to the Community of Jesus, or they would have sent me to, we had satellite communities. Like if you were a bad community member, you could be sent to another lesser community for punishment. And
Yeah.
so basically I had a breakdown, and my sister, who always believed it was a cult, she had investigated it as a cult. She went to some investigators to look at it. My sister had tried, when I was 16, my sister tried to get my parents to see that it was a cult, and they wouldn't acknowledge it.
Mhm.
And then later on, a few years later, a neighbor of my parents were really suspicious from the stories I was talking about, and so they hired a private investigator to investigate uh, Grenville and the Community of Jesus and its satellite communities.
Mhm.
And he came up with this big thing that illustrated where people were going, what they were doing, and their doctrine, and how
Mm.
damaging it was. And my dad didn't read it. He didn't even look at, he wouldn't
Mm.
even acknowledge it. And that was because Grenville changed me. And that's why he had sent me there. So he wasn't willing to really look at, it was a tough love era. And so the kinds of things that I was saying were happening. He kind of thought that was tough love. So anyway, I left
Mhm.
Grenville in 2001, went to my sister's house, and then went into rehab. And I was suicidal, and
Mm.
I was really like I didn't care if like I didn't want to live anymore. Really, I didn't want to get better. It wasn't, the rehab was about my sister because she was so upset about me and what was happening
Mhm.
to me. But I did it for her because I couldn't stand to see her in the state she was. So I did, and I got sober. Thank God. I was in
Mm.
re I was in rehab for about 9 months in total, two different rehabs. And I didn't think Grenville was the problem. Like in all my
Oh, wow.
talking at rehab, like Grenville, it was still my home. It was
Yeah.
still, I didn't know it was a cult. I didn't know it was abusive. I couldn't acknowledge it at that point. And so I was dealing with my sobriety, but I wasn't really touching on that kind of stuff. It wasn't until 2007 when the school closed and the press came out. The students went to the Globe and Mail newspaper in Toronto, and they talked about
Mhm.
the abuses. And the paper picked up on it and did about from September 2007 to about November 2007, almost every day the front page was a story about
Mhm.
Grenville. And I was reading this stuff and I went, what? Like they were revealing all
Yeah.
this stuff about like the mothers were lesbians, and the mother came,
Oh,
Mother Judy, and that, they started revealing stuff that I was like, what? And then so
yeah.
I'm trying to deal with it and try to understand it, but I'm still brainwashed.
Mm.
And then what happened? Oh, and then the students started a class action lawsuit, and they started to there was a message board called FACTNet, which stands for Fight Against Coercive Tactics. And so
Mhm.
Scientologists and lots of cult people go to that message board and they're like
Yeah.
talking to each other. So I dipped into that and I went to the Grenville Community of Jesus branch of it, and I'm reading what they're writing, and I'm thinking, "Oh my God, that happened to me. They did the same thing to me." And then that was
Mhm.
my student self response. Oh yeah, they did that to
Mhm.
me. And then my staff, when I became a staff there, my staff self, and Granville being a family, was defensive. Like, what do you mean? We didn't on purpose try to hurt people like the students. It was like a war was going on
Mhm.
inside me. And so I created two different logins. I created one for the student me, and I created a login for the staff me, like anonymous logins, so that I could argue both ways
Isn't
because I
that
was so
funny?
divided.
Oh,
So that's why I wrote the book, because I was trying to bring those two sides
yeah.
of me together. So basically I have been in AA for 24 years now,
Mhm.
and it's helped bring me back to the God of my understanding, not the God that I prayed to when I was 16. Like, yes, I'll pray to get out of trouble.
Yes.
Yes, I'll give my heart to God. Right.
Yeah.
I've, I've, I've now like willingly, my own will has
Yes.
accepted God. The God that I want is not
Mhm.
that God at all.
Mhm.
And so my relationship with God is like just, it's growing by the minute. And it took me a long time to go back to a church. It took me 20 years. I just joined a church a
Wow.
couple of years ago, and I haven't run since. Like I have stayed, and it's a good thing. It's really good. And the lawsuit was, it took about 16 years for the lawsuit to get settled. So last
Mhm.
November it was settled. And so all of the students, including me, even though I was a staff as well, but I was a student, will get a monetary
Mhm.
like a, from the settlement, right?
Yeah.
And so my book was really, it was for me to kind of come to terms with the fact that I was an abuser, because I was an
Mhm.
adult there, and I was a teacher there, and I was carrying out the doctrine, and I was also a victim. And that really was so confusing. That's what brought the book about.
Mhm.
Um, and what I've come to understand is that those two sides of me are will probably never come together, but I've come to accept it. I've come to accept that
Mhm.
I don't have to bring it together. I will have different. You understand what
Yeah,
I mean?
I do understand.
So yeah, so basically, but yeah, and it was exciting because I did go to in the last few years, I found a cult support group in Montreal. It's called the International Cultic Association, and they had support group meetings. And because I went to therapy, I've had tons of therapy, but nobody,
Mhm.
the cult thing, people, unless they're a cult specialist, the people don't know what they're doing. Like they don't, it's not very helpful. But when I found this group in Montreal, I went to their, every 2 weeks they'd have like a Zoom support group. And
Mhm.
that was the best, that's the best help I've ever had, because we all had gone through the same thing. And to hear other people tell their stories was like unbelievably validating. I just like, I could have like forgotten all the therapy I've had, like could have gone out the window
Yeah.
compared to what I got with that. And so anyway, I did put my book in. They have an award they give for writers. Well, not writers, but they have
Wow.
an award for people who do cult research, and that's one section. And they have a section for popular books on their people's cult experiences. And I won this year. So I'm going to Montreal.
Wow.
I'm going to Montreal on July 5th to accept my
Well,
award for my little
congratulations.
book.
Yeah. Well, your little book is quite good. Like I said, I've not finished it, but I'm looking
Mhm,
forward to it. I'm going to finish it tonight. I don't have
mhm.
a headache, y'all, for about the first day in 5
Oh,
days. There's
good.
no headache. So I'm
Yeah.
planning to read tonight, but I am over halfway through.
Aw.
So, it's beautifully written, very
Thank you.
detailed. Um, I did wonder, and I may have missed it, or, what kind of vows did you have to take whenever
Mhm.
you joined the community of
Yeah.
Jesus?
I actually wrote my book, my vows in the book, and it was
Yeah.
I believe they were to be obedient, and
Mhm.
that's why I use the title obedient, like a cult of
Mhm.
obedience, to be obedient to Mother Kay and Mother Judy. So it
Who
was a
turned out to be lesbians,
who turned
right?
out to be lesbians, but anyway, a vow to be obedient to their directive. And so that was sort of stability. Oh yeah, the vow was something about allowing the mothers to chastise and correct me.
Mhm.
That was in the wording of the vow.
Mhm.
So
I thought
they,
that's
so
what it was, but I didn't know if I had missed something else.
yeah, no, it was something like that. Anyway, it
Yeah.
was that was the vow, and then you got the cross, and then you were then having to write letters to the mothers. Like once a month, we'd have to write to the mothers about our spiritual state, and then they would correct
Mhm.
us or whatever would come in a letter. And I saved every letter because honest to God, I believed they were speaking for God,
Mhm.
because I had become so attached. And so
Yes.
I was very,
You're indoctrinated, so.
well, yeah, and I was susceptible. I'm a very
Mhm.
susceptible person. Like not everybody is, right? But I was.
Mhm.
So,
Mm. Oh, you have such a beautiful way of speaking. You wrote beautifully, you speak beautifully. I'm highly impressed with you. I really am. And I think that it would be wonderful if you could go around to different places and speak to groups of people. And, I think, I don't know, I just think that you'd be so good at that because you're so clearly spoken and with such care and
yeah,
maturity about it.
I think that if I to leave any, like the final thing I would say is that the thing I'm most grateful for, like everything I've gone through has been used in some way in my life.
Mhm.
So any people I come in contact with, whether it's sponsees or whether it's I volunteer at a youth hub here in where I live,
Mhm.
and I work with the youth now. And I feel like everything I went through is valuable. I can use it in all my relationships, and
Mhm.
so I don't regret it. I think it's sad on some level that kids were treated that way, but I
Yes.
also believe that everything can be used for good in the end. And I think it has to do with, like, forgiveness, forgiving. Um, in AA, they're very big on owning your stuff, right? And so when I think about the mothers, for example, and I think about, well, how on earth could these
Mhm.
people who led this incredibly big, like, if you go online and see what the Community of Jesus looks like now,
Mhm.
it's pretty impressive what they do. And how
Mhm.
could people who are like they did this one thing and then they lived a different way, and they were like, you know, um, what I have come to understand is that I understand myself pretty well, and I know that
Mhm.
I'm prone to all kinds of things, like, I don't know, like jealousies, and like, I'm a human being and I'm totally fallible.
Absolutely.
And so it's very easy for me to kind of get off track on things, right? And so why would they be any different? And if they didn't have checks
Absolutely.
and balances, we had checks and balances, like really bad ones, strong ones,
Yeah.
right? But they didn't. And so I'm thinking,
Yeah.
well, if that had been me and nobody was correct, nobody was stopping me, what would I be capable of doing? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And maybe I would have been
Absolutely.
fine. Maybe I would have been fine, but I don't know.
Maybe.
I do know myself well enough, like with my mother, for example, or with my father. I'll give a quick example of my dad. I really resented my father because he was really sarcastic with me. He didn't know how to just
Mhm.
talk about something. He would zing me, right? With a
Mhm.
put down, a really strong put down. When I became a teacher and I had like a bothersome student, my emotions were so strong, I couldn't hold them back. And I had my father's ability to zing. And I
Oh,
really I nailed a couple of kids, and the whole class
wow.
gasped. Like, they went, "Oh, Miss Patrick," right? And I left the room in tears because I realized that I was so much like
Mhm.
him, and that I could no more have stopped what came out of my mouth as I could have, wild horses couldn't have stopped me. I wouldn't have been able to stop myself. So that helped me look back at my father and say, okay, if I couldn't have stopped
Mhm.
myself, it was in me so strongly, he
Yeah.
couldn't either,
Yeah.
right? So it helped me forgive, a little bit of forgiveness. And
Mhm.
with the mothers, it's the same thing. They got off track, horribly off track,
Mhm.
right? And they
I
damaged a
understand that.
lot
I
of
really
people,
do.
a
Mhm.
lot of people, but they're dead. Nobody,
Scientology has their own kind of group of people that were like that, and a lot of them are still in Scientology, some are not. One very famous one would
Yeah.
be Mike Rinder, who
hmm
was both a victim and a perpetrator of abuse, and so,
yeah,
if he had not been a victim, he probably would not have been a perpetrator, in all honesty. And so I
yeah.
kind of can get that, it
That's
it
so interesting,
feeds
this
each
part.
other. Yeah.
Yeah, so when I was trying to come to terms with the fact that I was a perpetrator because I
Uh-huh.
was carrying out doing that lifestyle with those kids, I
Mhm.
just couldn't get around the fact that I felt that I had no choice. And so what
Mhm.
I ended up doing was I went on Google, or I went on YouTube, and I looked up the Nazis that were in jail for
Mhm.
their part in the Holocaust, and
Mhm.
these were like monster people, right? Who killed
Oh,
like
yeah.
thousands and thousands of
Thousands
kids.
of people.
And it
Mm.
fascinated me how their conscience could allow them to do that. And so
Mhm.
I went on YouTube and watched some of their interviews. It was fascinating, but it was so stark to me that, like, their excuse was, like, somebody asked them, interviewer, why did you do this? How could you allow that to happen? And they all of them said, I was following directions.
Mhm.
I would have been punished. I would have lost my job. Could have been jailed. I could have been sent to a concentration camp if I didn't follow
Mhm.
the orders. And that fear is very strong.
Mhm.
I'm not
And it's
saying that
very
the
real.
Nazis, there were some Nazis
No.
that really got off on it, right? Like really got off on
Well,
what they
yeah.
did.
Of
But
course. Of course.
there's sadistic people. But I related to that. When I heard them say that,
Mhm.
I said, you know, like 'cause the kids, the students I taught have come to me since on Facebook and said, this is what you did to me. You punished
Mm.
me, or you told on me, or you did something. And I mean, I wept because I knew I did it. Like I knew I did it, but my heart said, but I was trying to save myself, because if I hadn't done that,
Mhm.
I would have been punished. So yes, I was selfish, and that's what I did to save myself. And that's what I have to come to terms with, that I was more important than those kids. And so anyway, that's an interesting kind of
Mm.
being a victim of it and also being a part of it was very tricky.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow.
But
There's
I'm
just so
mostly
much.
so blown away with the
I
courage that Sarah shows by being so open and vulnerable and
I am too.
honest with, you know, like here's my truth, here's my story, good, bad, ugly, but let it teach you something.
Hmm.
Let you learn and
Absolutely.
take something from it and hopefully make yourself a better person.
Yeah.
And that I think is the most
Mm.
beautiful part of this book
I
is
do too. I really do.
showing all of it just in hopes that it will, like, I remember having conversations about it too where, you know, Sarah had expressed to me that if it helps even one of the
Mhm.
students that I harmed, then it's all worth it, you know.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's,
Yeah.
I think, the most beautiful message behind this memoir,
Hmm.
truly.
Mm. It is a beautiful book. It is a hard read, but an easy read at the same time. It's quick, and well written, so therefore it is an easy read. But you are so honest in it that your honesty with everything is so inspiring. I can't seem to find the words. I'm very inspired by you and very moved by your
Thank you,
story.
Cece.
And I mean that with every bit of me. I absolutely mean that. And Angie, I'm wondering, like, so did she tell you the story before you read the book, or was reading the book the first time you heard the story?
I first heard the story when I asked Sarah. I didn't hear all of it, but I had
Mhm.
asked Sarah when we celebrate in our AA group, when we celebrate our 1 year of sobriety, we are like we chair the meeting and we ask somebody to be a speaker for that meeting because they're speaker meetings. And so
Mhm.
the person who was chairing my meeting was my sponsor. So I had asked Sarah, who I refer to as my step sponsor, if
Yeah.
she would speak for that meeting for me. And I remember sitting there with my family in the front row and just being like shocked because I believe you started that off by saying, "Oh, everybody's heard my story." And I'm like, "Okay, but I haven't." And then when I
Yeah.
heard it, I was like, what? Like, I
Yeah.
had no idea because Sarah is just so loving and supportive
Mhm.
and caring and uplifting. And these things were so shocking to me that I was like, if this were me, if these things had happened to me, I would not be able to have the strength to push another sponsee towards God the way that she does.
Yeah.
If like I would feel like I was a victim of God. You know,
Yeah.
like how could he do all these horrible things to me and then turn me by brainwashing me into a monster
Hmm.
to harm others, like, and still find a way to come out of all of that and make this, like, make the
Mhm.
ugly beautiful, to
Yeah.
take the dirt and dust it off and clean it up and still find love
Mhm.
to share and to uplift and support other people in their journey. Like, I don't think that I would have that kind of strength, you know, in that particular
Mhm.
situation. So I was really blown away.
I don't
I
know if I
didn't
would
know some of
either.
the details that were in this
Yeah.
book. So I really did, like, I had an outline, but this book really showed me what she meant when she was talking about how she was on both sides. sides where she was a
Mhm.
victim and she was an abuser. And I kind of just didn't really, I kind of was just
Mhm.
like, shoved it off like, no, Sarah's not capable of being an
Yeah.
abuser. I know Sarah. She's too sweet, you know? And then I read this book and I was like, this is what she means. And it also showed me
Mhm.
how far she came.
Yeah, it's really
Yes.
interesting
Yeah.
how long it took for my thinking to change about the place.
Really.
How much the brainwashing affected me. I
Mhm.
Because it took 20 years for me to get to a place where I could call it a cult, right?
Mhm.
It was a long journey, and I wasn't about to pretend to call it a cult if I didn't believe it, you know. So
Mhm.
that's amazing in itself that I could that God, I feel like God brought me to a point where I could, you know, I could see it for what it was without it shattering
Mhm.
me, you know, without it shattering me that my family
Mm.
wasn't what I thought it was, that what I committed my life to wasn't what I thought it was. And,
Absolutely.
you know,
But in the beginning of
Mm.
my sobriety to meeting Sarah, my higher power was the group collective because I just could not put my eyes on God. So I was taught in rehab that, you know, if you can't do that, then, you know, you can at least be able to see that a group is stronger than one man on their own.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, yeah, I
Absolutely.
can get behind that. I can see that. Yes. So my
Yeah.
higher power was the group collective. But after Sarah, that's when I was able to turn my eyes to God and be like, okay, you know, like there
Mhm.
is forgiveness here. There is a different way to look at it. There is
Yeah.
love, you know, and so it turned into something much more powerful and directed towards God itself, which is something that really flipped my sobriety journey on its head. Like it was kind of like
It's
nails
awesome.
on a chalkboard for the first
Mhm.
year, just really dragging myself through it. And after that, it was a year of getting to know God, and this third year
Mhm.
has been a spiritual awakening where I'm like it's a totally different ball game. But I don't think that any of
Wow.
that would have been possible. I'd still be really dragging myself along, I think, if it hadn't
Yeah.
been for Sarah and her story and her openness and honesty and willingness to share the darkness in her story in order for others to find a little light.
yeah. I'll
Mhm.
just say one thing about it is that just the interesting response when I put my book out. Um, the response was mixed. So
Really?
I had some students, kids I had taught. There were some that were like, they loved it. They loved me. They were so grateful. It was like I got quite a bit of support, but there was a big group of people that were very angry with me for writing it
Yeah.
because I had been a staff and I was on the dark side. They didn't
Mhm.
really, they couldn't see that I had been a student. They just saw me as a staff. They wouldn't acknowledge that what I'd gone through earlier. And
Mhm.
they booted me off a Facebook page because they felt that I
Oh.
was like, they said some bad things, right? Which, you know, I got upset about it, a little bit upset about it, but I have a friend who, a friend from Granville. She was one of the principals of the school, and she was the one who went to the Globe and Mail and did acknowledge that there was abuse that happened there. So she's out there already as far publicly, and she
Mhm.
said to me, and so not many staff have come forward. A lot of them are still too wounded, too in la la land. They're in brainwash land, still
Mhm.
not accepting what it was, even though there's been a law, you know, a class action. They've said yes, this was abuse, right? And they still don't want to accept it. And so Joan and me and two other people are the ones who've sort of come forward publicly. And so anyway, I got, yeah, so there's a big group of people that are not happy with me about it because they feel like the staff
Mhm.
shouldn't have a voice, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, but
Well, I'm
and then
glad
oh
you do
yeah,
have a voice.
so I did go to Joan. I did go to my friend and I said, "Oh my God, they're booting me off Facebook," right? Because I thought that's where I'll advertise my book because that's my audience, right? I'm not doing anything else
Yeah.
really about it. And she said, "Well, what did you expect?" She said, "Did you expect me to
Aw.
all come running with flowers?" And I said, "I don't know what I expected. I just thought they would understand better." You know?
Yeah.
Anyway, but no, apparently not. And that's okay. They're very hurt. They're very, very hurt, and they're very
Yeah.
angry. And so I have to give them that space, right?
And they have to have their forgiveness in their time too,
In
and
their
their
time, and
understanding
if
in their
ever,
time.
right? If ever, yeah,
Yeah.
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 So it's okay.
I want to read some of the starred comments people have made while you've been
Sure.
talking. I've starred a few here and there. Right now, 33 of them. So Sarah Bowman said, I just put the book in my wish list on Amazon. So that's good. Lord Kiss Freak says, I just ordered the book.
Oh, lovely.
Lord Kiss Freak also says, love the shirt. He's talking about the shirt that you got her. Yeah. Yeah. Ben Bacon Bits. You'll see quite a bit of his comments. He had a lot to say, and he's so wise. And he said, oh, how nice and loving. He's talking about the ones that how they were treating you. That he's
Oh,
being sarcastic. How
yeah.
nice and loving.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And he also said how any group treats females is a good indicator. Absolutely, it is.
Wow.
And Angie says that Sarah was saying during the intro that yes, her cult was very much like Scientology. It is. There's so many things that I'm just like, wow, that's like, textbook Scientology. It just amazes me that
Yeah.
and Scientology didn't make this stuff up either. So many of the cults all follow the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just amazing to me. Marilee said that she said, I carved in a wall when I was 7. I wish my dad was dead.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Ben said, that's a scary thing for a 7-year-old. Yeah, I think about my granddaughter. She's 7.
Yeah.
Ben also said that when you were talking about the drinking and stuff, it's self-medication for trauma.
Mm-hmm.
It's so, yeah. And Mischief Managed, she's another one of my mods. She said, I absolutely, 100%. So Ben also said, whenever you said that you were told that you would not cry anymore, he said that Jesus wept.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Ben also said it's emotional control. It's behavioral control. He's right on that too. Whenever you were talking about the woman that had to wear the sign that said, I refuse to grow up, or,
Mm-hmm.
Heat My Short says, I also refuse to grow up.
He-
We're going to make him a sign and make him wear it. Mischief
His name is
Managed
Heat My
says,
Shorts, like coming out.
yeah, heat my shorts. Yeah. Pretty much we can tell that he refuses to grow up.
Yeah.
So
We like
Mischief
him just the
Manon
way
says
he
that
is.
yes, we do. That's horrible. Your story is just, yeah. Lord Kiss Freak could say that it was cruel, that the story was cruel. Heat My Short says that he's sorry.
Oh.
And Ben Bacon Bits says that it's like the RPF, which is what is it? It's a rehabilitation thing. It's a punishment thing in Scientology where they send you off and you have to do manual labor, like scrubbing floors with a toothbrush and just horrible things. And it doesn't matter if you're a child or if you're 90 years old, they can do the same thing to you. So Ben Bacon Bit says he actually remembers that message board that you were talking about, the fact.net. Yeah. He remembers that. So
Rehabilitation Project Force. Yes. Thank
yeah,
you.
Rehabilitation Project Force. Yeah. I don't know why I couldn't think of it.
So back.
Yeah, she's always got my back. Ben says, yeah, there it is, a leader demanding adoration. That's whenever we were talking about the oh gosh. Oh my gosh. How you had to swear that you would have allegiance to the sisters.
To the mothers.
Yeah.
To the mothers.
Yeah. Sarah Bowman says, dear goodness, what a messed up group. Absolutely. Bless your heart for having survived that. this is very nice. Ben, who I just think is so wise, he and Joel are both just so wise. Ben says,
kind.
it's funny, yes, and kind, how in such a short dissertation you can check so many boxes. You have absolutely told it so well. I mean, I I couldn't have said it so well if I had written it down and edited it and changed it and did all this stuff. I'm in awe of how well you spoke. Jennifer Mahurin, thank you so much for being a new member. Okay, Ben, let's put it up here. I'm going to be in trouble for not having put them up there. I'm sure she's saying it somewhere. Ben Baconbits says, yes, the milligram experiment showed how quickly normal people will follow instructions no matter how harmful if the right things are present.
What
Absolutely.
was that shocking where they
Oh, the
were
shock. Oh, the.
electrocute, or
Oh
they
God,
thought
it's
they were
Mhm.
electrocuting
yeah,
people?
yeah,
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
that's terrifying. They also had that
So,
college prison experiment
yeah.
where the
Yeah,
students took over the prison and
yeah.
Yeah.
turned
Yeah.
into like malicious people.
Yeah. So Lord Kiss Freak is agreeing with Angie and her thoughts on Sarah 100%. I think we all do. Here is Joel, and he says, "Well, I am speechless." He's just like, if you have made Joel speechless, you have really accomplished something. He's
I can. Oh, sorry.
amazing. So Ben says, I applaud Sarah for getting help on this. It's really important to heal from this kind of trauma. And here's this one I thought was funny.
Oh, so okay. Go ahead.
Huh?
Oh,
Mischief Managed says, sorry guys, I'm still speechless that Joel is speechless.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah,
I, I
absolutely.
forgot to mention. I could go into a lot of detail about the Community of Jesus
Well,
and
yeah.
where they got their ideas from, but one of the main places they got this idea of correcting someone, on this
Hmm.
their symbol, unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies. That's from John something, John whatever.
Yeah.
The idea is that you have to die in order to live properly,
Yeah.
right? So this act of dying is like, I don't know if you guys have heard of different religious orders where they flagellate themselves, where they have like a
Hmm.
stick or something and they're hitting, like for their sins, they get on the ground and
Hmm.
they do this business. So where the mothers got their doctrine from was from a German order, the Sisterhood of Mary in Darmstadt, Germany, and they were an order that founded on their founding principle was to repent for the sins of the Germans in World War II. So
Hmm.
their convent was actually beside the concentration camp Auschwitz, and
Hmm.
that's how they lived. They were correcting each other in light sessions. That's where light sessions came from, was from these
Hmm.
German sisters, and the mothers adopted it and brought it over to Cape Cod where they were.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
they basically said, we can do
Mm.
this community thing, meaning the Sisters of Mary in Germany. We can do this better than they can. So they came back to Cape Cod and started doing it. And it was
Mm.
very, very, and they're this punishing thing, like they separated children from their families,
Hmm.
like all kinds of crazy, terrible stuff. So yeah, that's where it came from. That's where it originated.
Wow.
Wow. Wow.
That kind of makes a lot of sense, though.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Not that it's okay, but the whole practice kind of makes sense if you know where it came from.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
scary.
Hmm.
yeah.
Marilee says that she's talking to Ben, but she says not only her own healing, talking about Sarah, but others who have heard her story and have been helped. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you,
Even if some of
Marilee.
those students, if they haven't forgiven you yet, I think that they will. I really do. I think that it might take some time.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but I think they will. Wild Poppy says, congratulations on sobriety and a healing path. It's a miraculous journey, isn't it,
It
though? I
is. It
really
is.
cannot encourage you enough to read the book, guys.
Yeah.
I really
Thank you
do.
very much, Wild Poppy. Thank you. You're right. Absolutely right.
Hmm. We're almost at the bottom of this. Ben Bacon Bit says, Happens a lot for a group to say they are going after God to start becoming about the leader.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
Which is sad. Ben says such thinking is sadly simplistic. We all have a shadow side which is capable of unspeakable evil.
Mhm.
Yeah. In the right situations, I absolutely agree that, we all have that side that we don't really know what, with all of the right indoctrinations and the situation and everything,
Yeah.
what we would do in certain
Yeah.
situations.
Yeah.
So, influence causes people to do some really terrible things, and everyone is subject to it. Absolutely. Absolutely. We see that in um, Scientology. We see that in so many other cults that we study. We see that with content creators. It's just amazing
Yeah.
how a good
Sure.
thing can go so bad and, sometimes can come back, and be what it needs to be with the right with the right changes implemented. So I cannot I cannot thank you both enough for being here today. I I welcome you back anytime. I hope that you'll come and join us some, Sarah, and
I'd
become
like
a part
to.
of our community. We
I
would
would
love
like
to
to
have you
very
here.
much. I'd like to get to know you
Our
better.
motto here is thrive, not just survive, and I believe that you are doing that. You are thriving, not just surviving, and you're just lovely. And I think that you fit in perfectly with our group. So please do come back and see us and I'm just like amazed. And Angie, I
Thank
will
you.
talk to you later tonight or tomorrow about when you want to come on next week. I can't wait to hear all of your story because everybody has such fascinating stories. We they don't have to be this in depth, this detailed and this horrific even. I just think that when we share each other's stories, it brings us all closer. It makes us all feel heard and seen, and it makes us not feel alone because maybe something in each of your stories will resonate with somebody else, even if it's not the entire story. It just, I don't know. I just think that this is my favorite part about my channel is talking to people, just regular people and hearing your stories. So anyway, Marilee says that her mom joined a bizarre cult when she was 2 and left when she was 5. So that's, oh, wow. I remember you saying something about that. Yes, and Lord Kiss Freak says, "Thanks for sharing your stories, ladies." Yeah. So, we're gonna hear all of Angie's next week. I'm so excited. And Sarah, if you wanna come on with her, you're absolutely
I'd love to
welcome.
hear her story.
Yeah,
I will be
absolutely.
there.
Yeah. Whether you wanna be on stage or just in the chat, whatever you wanna do, it's absolutely fine. Just let us know what you want. So, but I am gonna go ahead and end this for today, if that's okay with everybody. I thank everybody for being here. I thank you 2 wonderful, beautiful ladies for being here, and I'm gonna go finish a book is what I'm gonna do. We're
Thank you to
having
all of you
leftovers
for
for
being
dinner.
here. Thank you so
Oh,
much
yeah,
for being here. It means a
and
lot. And
this
thank you
this
for
was
all your
kind of
comments.
an odd time of day for us lately. This used to be my regular time, but I've been kind of all over the place, but there will be many, many, many more that pop in on the replay. So, I mean, we end up with hundreds of views for our videos. So, we didn't have that many in chat today, but we will have that many. We always do. So, once
Yeah.
everybody comes in later, and then over the weekend, that usually explodes again when people are home with time off. So,
Right.
Ben Bacon Bit says, "We rise by lifting others." Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, ladies, I'm gonna go ahead and take you off the screen and let you
All
go,
right,
and I will be
guys.
talking to you soon. Thank you so
Bye bye.
much.
Thank you,
Hi,
Susie.
Bye.
thanks.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you. They are so sweet. I really enjoyed talking to both of them. I hope you did too. And I wanna thank you all. You had such amazing comments, and I was kind of in shock. There were several comments, but hey, Iron Sword, I didn't see you come in. There were several comments, but you were listening so intent, just so intently to these ladies. Barbie, good to see you too, guys. I've missed you. I welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here. And like I told the ladies, I'm going to get off here now and I'm going to go finish that book. I've got about a third maybe of it to go, and I'm just really wanting to see what that is. So Lord Kiss Freak, thank you for being a member for a month. While I'm at it, I want to acknowledge that. Those memberships mean a lot to me. It really does. Thank you so much. I'm going to go. Bless you all for being here. Thank you so much. And I will be back tomorrow. We've got great shows all week. In fact, I have 2 shows tomorrow. So one at 5 and one at 8. So be watching for those. I will talk to you guys later. Love you all. Goodbye.
Hope you enjoyed the show, so glad you were here. We meet here most days, we're but first coffee and you're welcome here. We talk about hard subjects, but we also laugh a lot. If you have a loss or win, we will cheer for you. We're but first coffee and you are safe here. So hit those like and subscribe buttons, notifications set to all. You don't want to miss a show, because this is your home to y'all. So hit those like and subscribe buttons, notifications set to all. You don't want to miss a show, because this is your home to y'all. So hit those like and subscribe buttons, notifications set to all.